Hello and welcome to this video series where I'll be talking about biological image data management with OMERO. I'm Balaji Ramalingam, a part of the OME consortium, and I'm based in Dundee. To give you a brief outline on what we'll be covering in this brief video snippet, we'll be starting off with how to set up the OMERO command line client and then eventually go into details of how to do some basic imports of images using the command line client. The setup requirements are highlighted in this slide. The three basic requirements include Python, ICE, and the OMERO server bundle. The versions that I'll be using during this demonstration are highlighted on this slide, and the relevant documentations for the installation are highlighted in the links as well. I'll be using ICE 3.6 for this demonstration, just to highlight the fact that that will be the recommended version for OMERO 5.3 once it gets released. And for this demonstration, I'll be using an OMERO server, and the details of this server are highlighted on this slide. Now let's look at the workflow, and before getting into the workflow, let's look at the downloads pages first. Now we're basically at the downloads page of OMERO, and under the OMERO server's download section you have two options. Based on the version of ICE that you've installed locally, you can download the appropriate server bundle, and we have documentations on how to install ICE 3.6 as well. As I said before, ICE 3.6 will be the recommended version of ICE when OMERO 5.3 gets released. This page is just to highlight the installation of ICE 3.6 and just to highlight the server that we'll be using during this demonstration purpose. It has one group which is called the light microscopy group, which has three users: facility manager, facility user 1, and facility user 2. All of them have 0 images currently. Now let's start the workflow. I have already downloaded the OMERO server bundle locally, and I've changed into that directory as my working directory. Now let's start with the most basic OMERO import command, which is then OMERO import and the path to your image. In this case, I'm trying to import a DV image into the server, and it throws a few prompts like the server name and port request. This time I'm happy with them. The username, which I'm happy with as well, and then the password in this case, which basically creates a session and imports the image that you've selected into the server. You can check this on the client, and as you can see, the image has been imported into the server. Now this is the most basic import command, but the command line OMERO import has so many other options as well, and these can be accessed by typing OMERO import help. This will basically highlight all the arguments that can be used with the OMERO import command, and as you can see, you can use so many different arguments to avoid the prompts or have different options during your input from the command line client. Now we'll try and use a few of these flags just to highlight the use of the import arguments. Since it was throwing a few prompts when we imported the image without any arguments, let's try and input a few of these arguments and see if we can get away from those prompts. In this case, I'm trying to use the server and port arguments, and I'll try to import it, and I'll not give the username currently, and see how that goes. In this case, you would expect a prompt for a username, but it does not throw any prompts, but imports the image into the same user as before. And there's a reason for this, because there's something called as an idle timeout. When you run a command for importing images in the command line importer, it creates a session and there's an idle timeout of 10 minutes. So if you run another command for importing an image within these 10 minutes, you'll import, you won't create another session, but it will use the session that was previously created. So that just highlights the use of a few flags. But in both cases, as you saw, the images were imported into the orphaned images folder, but there are options to import them into a dataset of your choice, as well. In this case, let me import it. Test import dataset name, and also import it into another user, just to highlight the user flag as well. Now it will prompt for a password because it's a new user. Now that I have inputted the password, it will create a new session and import the image into the facility user 1 under dataset test import. Now, this is just to highlight the use of targets within the command line client as one of the arguments. But there's more documentation on this regard on how to use the targets, and that's highlighted on this documentation page on import targets. Use of dataset name is just one of the options, but in many cases users might also want to use regular expressions to use names which are part of the image path. Like in this case, there is a folder hierarchy which carries some metadata as well, and users might want to create a dataset name from one of the folder names in the path. And the example shown in this page basically highlights any name which comes after the images folder to be used as the dataset name. Now let's try and recreate the same workflow with a folder under our demonstration folder. So I'd like to import this folder 1 images, which has 3 images which are all DVs, into the server. So basically I'll first edit the path, and then the target we'll try and use a regular expression. I'm copying the regular expression from the documentation page and pasting it in the command line argument and editing the folder name, which is facility manager workshops, and whatever folder that comes after facility manager workshops needs to be called as the dataset name. Now if I press enter, this should basically use the previous existing session and import the 3 images under the dataset name folder 1 images in facility user 1. Refreshing the data tree, now you see 3 images with the dataset name folder 1 images has been imported into the server. Now that completes a brief workflow of how to import images using the command line arguments and There are a few other things that you could do, which is to use this, copy the command line arguments that I'd used one at a time. If you want to import multiple folders with the regular expressions and etc., you could copy the commands, put them into a shell script, and run the shell script in one go, so that you don't have to keep typing the same commands over and over again. That's just to highlight bulk import workflows, and that completes this brief demonstration of the basic import workflows in OMERO. Thank you for watching the video.